Just a few days ago, I started a fresh save and grounded to give me something to do on stream between now and the 1.0 release. Follow me on Twitch if you want to catch my live streams. Knowing there is a limited amount of resources available to upgrade gear early on, I needed to decide which weapon I was going to use until I got the crafting recipes for the upgrade resources. Without putting much thought into it, and to do something a little different, I decided to upgrade my insect axe. It was the first tier 2 weapon I got, and rather than me going the easy route of upgrading a red ant club, I thought it would make for a unique playthrough. I woke up the next day and wondered if the insect axe is actually a good weapon. I decided to find out, and that's why I'm making this video. I looked at every type of weapon as well as every upgrade combination against every enemy in the game right now. The results left me speechless, which I know may seem impossible, but watch on to find out why. Now you might be expecting a rant to follow, but that's not going to be the case. I'm simply going to provide you with the information I put together and tell you why I think it is the way it is. Let's get started. The first thing we need to look at is the different types of weapon damage and which weapons fall into each category. There are currently 6 types of damage, but we're only going to be looking at 5 of them. The one we'll be omitting is explosive damage because as of right now, the only way to deal that type of damage is using Brat Burst, Splat Burst, and the spiky bird traps. None of the existing enemies are weak to explosive damage, however 6 enemies are resistant to it. The Assistant Manager, the Broodmother, Infected Ladybugs, Infected Larvae, Infected Mites, and Infected Wolf Spiders. The 5 types of damage we'll be looking at cover all the melee and ranged weapons in the game. First up is Busting, which is dealt by hammers. Second is Chopping, which is dealt by axes. Next is Slashing, which is dealt by daggers and most swords. Then we have Stabbing, which is dealt by arrows, spears, and the Mosquito Needle. Finally, we have Generic, which is dealt by clubs. I believe Punching, Throwing Grass, Pebblets, and Weed Stems, as well as Turrets, also are generic. Since this video is looking strictly at weapons, we will only be considering clubs for the generic damage type. To compare all the weapons, I devised a simple scoring system. If an enemy is weak to a weapon's damage type, the weapon gets a +1. If it's neutral, it gets a 0, and if it's resistant, it gets a -1. Here's a chart showing how each type of weapon rates against all the enemies from levels 0 to 5. As you can see, generic weapons perform best because they are neutral against all enemies. Much to my dismay, chopping damage, which was what the insect axe deals, is far and away the worst. The reason for this is only 4 enemies are weak to chopping damage, while 23 are resistant. 3 of the 4 enemies that are weak to chopping are also weak to slashing, so axes basically are only useful for chopping down grass and weeds. Thankfully, I discovered this early on before investing too many upgrade resources into the insect axe. I also looked at how each type of weapon performs early, mid, and late game. Generic, of course, is the same all the way through, and busting is about the same. Chopping is bad early and worse mid and late game. Stabbing is bad early and mid game, but is much better late game, which I find funny since I think the goal is to reduce bow cheesing, yet it performs great against many of the tougher enemies. Lastly, slashing is not great early, okay mid, but gets way worse late game. In addition to looking at the damage types, I also looked at the upgrade paths. Using the same scoring system of +1 for weak, 0 for neutral, and -1 for resistant, I scored each upgrade path. This means weapons can have scores ranging from 2 to -2. Here's the distribution of all the current combinations. This was the chart that left me speechless. As of right now, only 4 of the 20 combinations have a positive score, while 15 are negative, and the 4 chopping upgrades take the bottom 4 spots. Had I not done this analysis, I would have invested upgrade resources, which are limited for most of the current game, into a weapon that puts me at a severe disadvantage in most cases. Funnily enough, I have had more than a few people tell me how good a salty termite axe is, and looking at this chart just proves that. It ranks 18 of 20. I believe that people have overestimated its usefulness because it's one of the last weapons you'll likely get, and because it's okay against termites. I will say that based on the current distribution of weaknesses and resistances to the different upgrade paths, that I think many of the future enemies will be weak to salt. This is speculation, so don't get mad if you farm a bunch of salt and this turns out to be incorrect, but right now both fresh and spicy have more impact overall, leading me to believe that more balance will be made later in the game, so that salt will play a bigger role in the content we haven't seen. I've also heard rumors that there could be a sour upgrade path, and while that might happen this late in the game, it doesn't really make sense to introduce another type of upgrade. To wrap this video up, I want to do 2 things. Let you know which weapons and upgrade paths I recommend using, and also to explain why I think the weakness and resistance system is designed the way it is. If you want to take the most efficient path, just get a red ant club and upgrade it. That weapon alone can carry you through most of the current content. Paired with a bow, you shouldn't have many problems. Once you unlock tier 3 weapons, the safest route is the Club of the Mother Demon going the Mighty path, because all enemies are neutral to both generic and mighty. Of course, this won't provide you with the best possible weapon in every case, but with high damage output and with no enemies resistant to that combination, it will only be slightly below the perfect combination. This will also free up several inventory slots, which as we know are quite limited and grounded. So why is the weakness and resistance system designed this way? My best guess is because the game was, and to some extent is, too easy. Prior to the upgrade system, all you had to do was get the Mint Mace and Ladybug armor, and you would be nearly invincible. With the new system in place, and with the Mint Mace locked deep into the current content, the early game is much tougher. Most players will likely have no idea about the weakness and resistance system, which will result in many fights taking longer. The longer a fight lasts, the more likely you will lose, thus making the game harder without having to make any major changes to the combat system or enemy AI. Imagine if the chart I showed earlier was reversed, with most weapons providing a positive impact on most fights. How much easier would the game be? While there are other ways the game could have been made more challenging, this is the route the developers decided to go. Hopefully you found this video helpful, and if you did, make sure to click the like button. If you want to download a copy of the charts from this video, head over to my Discord, link in the description, and look in the Grounded Resources channel. Thank you for watching, and thank you to Handsome Ivan, Justin, Matthew Campbell, the Overseer91, and all my other channel members and patrons.